All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter today. It's promptly noon Eastern Time here, and we're here to talk about adding a new fund to our Church Windows chart of accounts in accounting. We're going to work together for about the next 20 minutes or so. I will definitely finish up with what I'm here to discuss no later than 20 minutes after. If you have questions that I'm unable to address during the webinar and you'd like to stick around after the 20 minutes are up, this topic may not even take the full 20 minutes. I'll be certainly happy to stick around and answer questions. If you've never attended a webinar event before, please expand the control panel and expand the questions portion of that. You can type in questions to me at any time during the event today. I will try my best to keep an eye on those and repeat those questions for everyone's benefit. And then we'll see what we can't do to get those answered. It is just me today, so I don't have anybody answering questions. So if I don't get to your question right away, please be patient with me. I will get to it eventually. So the first thing that we're starting to sort of take on in the webinars now is referencing our Church Windows training workbooks where possible, and adding accounts, including a fund, to the chart of accounts is listed in our accounting A102 book, pages 15 to 19. Now that doesn't cover everything that we're talking about today, but it does go through the basics of adding an account, including a fund. So those of you that have that A102 workbook may want to reference that when we're finished. Or if you don't have the workbooks, you may look at purchasing those online from the Church Windows store. It's kind of difficult to talk about adding a fund to the chart of accounts without really sort of answering the question about what a fund does or what a fund is, which kind of points me then, as I kind of construct these webinars, I go, okay, well, how do I approach it from, the broadest level possible so the attendees will try to get as much out of it as possible. Well, one of the things that I like to point out on these when dealing with funds, Church Windows Accounting is a fund accounting system, and so funds are critically important to the successful use of accounting and the chart of accounts and subsequently reports and everything else that we're going to be using for the system. So here, if I go to the Church Windows support blog, so you go to churchwindows.com/blog. I'm going to type in the keyword theory and hit search, and it does bring up a blog entry here on our page called Accounting Fund Theory. So basically what this is it's a blog entry right here that really kind of goes into some pretty explicit detail explaining how fund accounting is different than a commercial or personal accounting system. Okay, so right here it says the word fund, and what I'm talking about I'm sorry folks, I can't blow this up here larger, but right here the word fund, and it talks about a definition of a fund or what fund accounting is right here. In essence, a fund is a reporting entity that is set up to keep money separate from other fund monies, that has its own income and expense accounts, and it can have a balance that carries forward from one year to the next. But that, in essence, is the definition of a fund. Okay? Funds track money separately that assets or income and expenses may not. Okay? So funds are very important, and we're going to go through setting one up in our chart of accounts today. So there are a couple different ways to add accounts, including funds, in Church Windows. So the first one is if we go into either our Manage Accounts in the middle or Manage Accounts and View in the top left to reveal our chart of accounts. If I collapse everything down here and we expand, click the plus sign next to our Fund Balance account, it shows our current existing funds. So we have everything ranging from our general operating fund all the way down, through some other funds and a ledger for memorials with sub-funds, and then down ultimately into our net fixed asset fund balance. So we're going to be adding a new fund to this list. So one of the ways that we can add new accounts and funds to the chart of accounts is once we've clicked on a particular fund, we're going to go right over here to the right-hand side to the Tree View tab, right here. Let's see if I've gotten any better at drawing my arrows. I guess that's a little better. And then once we click on the Tree View tab, it still highlights our fund. I can simply right-click over the header called Funds, and notice a floating help message or an option pops up that says Add a new fund. So if I click on that, it opens up a Add New Fund account window and allows me to add the fund there. So we're going to call this our music fund. And then we're going to tab down. It automatically adds the word balance to it, because there's the fund and then there's the actual fund balance account. And here then we're going to type in, it's going to require that we enter an account number. And so we're going to make this one, how about 370.00 or 100? And we simply click OK. We can choose the subtotal where it belongs if you have a particular subtotal for funds where it belongs. In this case, we don't. It's just going to put it into all of our collective fund balance subtotal. And we're simply going to click OK. Okay. So one of the things that I always like to talk about here is that we notice now on the right hand side under our tree view, well, on both sides basically, we've got our music fund listed over here on the left and over here on the right under our tree view. Okay. However, one of the things that is now definitively different about this fund from our other funds is we notice that it doesn't have a plus or a minus sign next to it on the right. So, if we click on, say, our building fund and we expand that, notice we have these what appear like sort of sub accounts which tell us the income and expense accounts that are linked to each one of these subsequent funds, which again sort of goes back to our definition of a fund and how a fund is normally affected. Usually, while they're rare, we can post transactions directly to the front fund, but a fund is generally affected. A fund balance account is generally changed through the transactions that are posted to the income and expenses that are linked to that fund and not postings to the fund themselves directly. Hence the importance of our income and expenses. So in this case, right here, our music fund, 370.100, it doesn't have any income and expenses linked to it. Okay, so I can also right-click over it here, and again a menu pops up and says Add a fund subledger. No, we're not going to do that. Add an income account for music fund. Add an expense account to music fund. Delete or edit. So I could choose to add an income or an expense account here too if I wish. But I'd like to also take the opportunity to show you the other way that accounts can be added, including funds as well. So virtually anything you can do, under our Manage Accounts and Accounts Plus Minus in the top left, we can do under our Tree View tab here to the right by simply at our Chart of Accounts right-clicking over the account. So here, if we go to, we're going to close out of our Chart of Accounts now. We're going to go up to our Manage Accounts at the top left, Accounts Plus Minus. And we notice here all of our different account types are listed across the top left. Assets, AR clients, liabilities, payables, fund, income, and expense. So we can add these accounts the same way here like we can at the tree view. So we're going to choose income account. And then notice it defaults to our general operating fund. But here in our list, we're going to choose our new music fund. And we're going to call this one Music Fund Income. Again, it requires that I enter an account number that starts with the number 4. So we're going to try 470.100. And again, I can choose an appropriate subtotal that it belongs in. We're going to choose, say, Other Income, and we're going to go and click Add Account. And it adds that income account to our new music fund. So now notice on the right-hand side, under our tree view of our setup chart of accounts here, we do have a plus or a minus next to our music fund because we have one account added here. Okay? And I can do the same thing with expenses if as needed. So if I go, without even closing this window, if I simply go up to expense now, notice it just says Setup Chart of Accounts, and main expense accounts for, and it still selects my music fund. So I could go down the list here and continue to add expenses for the music fund. Okay. But there's something else I want to show about this as well, because I get this a lot as a support technician and trainer for Church Windows. I deal with a lot of these calls, and so I'm just passing on to you a lot of the things that I hear on my support calls. And one of them is that a church wants to add a new fund to their database, which we've gone through here, adding the fund, adding an income or an expense account. Well, in many cases, maybe the income and the expenses aren't new. We've had need to record income for a particular fund or project or purpose, or expenses for that project or purpose historically, which means our chart of accounts already has either an income or an expense account or accounts. We don't need to add new ones. We simply need to relink the current income or current expenses over to our new fund, and that's what we're going to show you now. So in order to do that, and this is very important because this is what I'm going to show you here is that, and I talk about this on my support calls a lot, is this is after an account is set up and added to the chart of accounts, income and expenses particularly, this is the only place that relinking can occur for an income or an expense. So if we go back to manage accounts in the middle or manage accounts in view in the top left, it reveals our chart of accounts again. So now if I just type in my search music, notice here's our fund, here is our income, and notice we have several music expenses already. Okay, so I don't think we're going to change our music, basically our musician salaries or anything to do with our compensation, but things like our music material. So we want to track how much we're expensing on our music material and music, like sheet music and things like that, throughout the year, and we're now going to link that over to our new fund. So I don't have any activity in it, but if I click on that new fund, that new expense, that expense that's been on the chart of accounts, if I click my detail tab to the right, we notice halfway down here where it says fund. So before today, this music material expense was linked to our general operating fund. So right here on the right-hand side, we're now going to click the down arrow, and we're going to scroll down, and there's our new music fund. So we simply change that to the new fund, and any of the activity in this expense account is that, any balance that's in this account dating back to the start of the year, 2016 in this case, will follow along with that expense to our new music fund. It is retroactive. This does not affect where that music material expense was linked for other or different accounting years, only for 2016. Okay, so yeah, if I did have a balance in there, that whatever that expense total was, it would now just be transferred or moved over to my new music fund. Okay, so let's just double check and make sure that we're not missing anything else. If I certainly want to, if I wanted to put my, say, special musicians, maybe we should put our special musicians over to there as well. So again, go down and choose, my music fund on the right under the detail tab. Do I have anything in there? Nope, I haven't expensed anything in there either. But if I did, again, what would happen is that all of that activity would follow right along with those income and those expense accounts, and I would come right over to my balance tab, and my music fund would have a balance, the net difference between the current year's income and expenses. Okay. Now again, in this case, because I've got now new music income, yes, I might need to go over to donations, add a new giving account called Music Fund Income, whatever I'm needing, and link that to my new income account if I wish. But that's a choice I can make. It says if that's where most of my, my music income, fund income is going to come from, is through donations, I definitely would do that. We would go over to donations here, and we would go into manage accounts and donations. Here I'm going to type in music. Do I have anything? No, I don't. So we're going to click on add, and we're going to just call this one 300 music giving, add giving account, close out, now on my music giving, here under my accounting links, I can choose the bank account where it's being deposited each week. And here under my income or credit account, I can choose my music fund income. And there you go. I've just set up a fund with an income account and a giving account and donations and linked them all together. So now if I have somebody giving towards music starting next week, I can go in and record that, and the system will know exactly where that income goes, where it should go into our accounting system. Okay? So again, we can add accounts in a couple of different ways in accounting. We can go either into our manage accounts in the middle and then go to our tree view here, and we can add accounts this way. Not just balance sheet accounts, but if I go, okay, I want to add another fund or another income account to my music fund, right click on it and just choose add income account for music fund or expense. Or we can go up to manage accounts, accounts plus minus, and go across and choose the account type we're wanting to add across the top left here. Okay. For a fund to operate successfully, it must have at least one income account and one expense. We have to have a means of being able to flow or credit new income into the fund, and we have to have a means of expensing money out of the fund. Okay? That's the bottom line for a fund is, again, while that we do sometimes need to transfer money in or out of a fund, maybe to another fund or from another fund into it, most of the time those funds are affected through the transactions that are posted to the income and expense accounts that are linked to it, not to the fund itself. Our treasurer's report accounts, basically. Okay? But yeah, that's it, folks. Again, as I said, I didn't think that this was going to take the full 20 minutes, but that's how you add the income or the expense. I mean, that's how you add a fund with its subsequent income and expense accounts or relink accounts as needed. So if if you've seen what you came to see, by all means, choose the exit leave webinar option from the file menu. Otherwise, I'm going to take a look over here and see if what questions we have here. Is there a report that will print out the mapping of the income and expense accounts to the funds? That's a great question. Yes. We go to reports, financial, fund activity report. We check accounts with zero balance. I'm going to go to my columns tab. Oh, we want to leave detailed. We don't want the consolidated. But under the columns, we're going to remove anything referencing our amounts. If I leave just account number and account name and simply click print, it will show in this case, my first fund, which is my general fund, then its subsequent income accounts, then it moves down into the expenses, and then shows, then it moves into the next fund. So there's a lot of income and expenses to our general fund, but then we go down to, say, our building fund, and the process starts over. Building fund balance, then with the income and subsequent expenses, etc. Great question. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Mary's asking, can you print off all the funds and their linking? Yeah, well, right, exactly. That's the same thing I just showed, Mary. That's one way to do it. That's the best report for that. Your list chart of accounts will also show the fund that income and expenses are linked to as well, just not in that nice reader-friendly format that the fund activity report does. Yeah, I mean, Susan, the linking of that, again, if you've got income and expenses that have been linked to your current dedicated fund that are now need to be shifted over to your new fund, by all means, do that exactly as we did here. Yes, it's retroactive to the start of the year, so whatever the year-to-date totals of your income and expenses are will follow right along. If you need to, you can post a beginning, a fund transfer for any December 15 balance that would have been carried forward into your miscellaneous dedicated fund, into that new fund. But absolutely, make life as easy on yourself as possible by recycling and reusing what you can. I'm sorry, Amber, I'm not sure what you're asking. Which process? I've been through several here. The fund activity report. Reports and export at the top, financial, fund activity report. Probably one of the most underused reports in the software. Again, leaving detailed as our report format right here. Again, clicking and checking accounts, include accounts with zero balance, but then clicking on the columns tab and removing current activity and year to date. I mean, at least if we're just wanting to look at it, yes, if you want to see totals, you can add current activity or year to date. But in this case, if all we're interested in seeing, here's our funds and here's the related accounts, then all you need is account number and account name. Is there any way to see the history of activity in a fund for several years at one time? Diana, nothing's coming to mind with regards to that. You'd have to run, again, the system accounting doesn't report on, doesn't allow us to run reports generally for accounts for years, for different accounting years. We don't want it to be, each report is designed to set up for each different accounting period. So you would most likely need to come in and run your fund activity report for 1 year at a time. The only exception to that would be something like our budget report, or on your treasurer's report using your previous year's column. But that's it. Yeah, there's not really a way to run the fund activity report for several years, simultaneously. Yeah, we don't want to confuse activity. The reason why we do that is we don't want readers of the report to be confused by what's current activity in this year versus other accounting years. So Church Windows has always really never permitted us to run reports that that is more than one accounting period, basically. All great questions. All right, I'm not seeing anything else coming in, folks. So hopefully we've answered all those questions for you. If you do have any other questions, please call us, 800-533-5227. And we hope to see you all at another future Church Windows User Group webinar event. All right. Thank you all so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.